Okay, thank you, Frank.
Oh.
It's a very interesting issue. Yeah, how do you define Chinese? Because we have Chinese living in PRC, we have Chinese living in Hong Kong, in Taiwan partially, and also Macau. But there's a lot of people, ethnic Chinese, living all over the world with other nationalities.
Yes.
So your point is Chinese. Yeah.
No, I think the question is not how do you define Chinese. You just use the term ethnic Chinese. Now, ethnic Chinese is certainly a much more exact term than just Chinese. Chinese can mean anything, right? Ethnic Chinese has to do with ethnicity. The word Chinese in itself really is open-ended, can mean anything and everything, or it can mean nothing. So when speaking, I think it is important to know what one is speaking about. And the tendency on the part of the Chinese government these days is to use a very broad concept and include everyone who has Chinese blood. And I think that the people who are being described as overseas Chinese, for instance, they may not even know that they're being described as overseas Chinese. For instance, I have seen American legislators, serving in the Congress, being described as overseas Chinese serving in a foreign legislature.
A very typical example could be, for example, the former U.S. ambassador to China, Gary Locke. He was always mostly labeled as overseas Chinese.
Yes, that label doesn't fit. But what I mean is, they cannot assume that people with Chinese blood are overseas Chinese. That is not the case. But I'm afraid this is very ingrained in a lot of thinking. And that includes not just people in the mainland, but people in Taiwan as well.
Oh, in Taiwan as well?
I remember the first time I went to Taiwan in 1968. And somebody, at that time the KMT was in control, of course. I must say the KMT and the Communist Party have very similar thinking in this regard, I think. And this person said to me, is this your first time back? 第一次回来. I said, well, I've never been here before. How can I come back if I've never been here before? And so in his mind, you belong here. So when you visit, you're coming back.
As long as you have Chinese blood.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that, I don't know about the Taiwan government today. I don't think they have the same mentality. I don't think they have the same thinking. But I think the KMT and the CCP both had shared this thinking.
So what's the reason behind that? Is this a more political reason behind that, or cultural reason behind that?
It's both political and cultural. I think that in this modern age, people should be defined by nationality. And if you look at the history of nationality legislation in China, the first nationality law passed in China was in the Ching dynasty, 1906. And at that time, they said that only the government can decide who is a Chinese national. That is, it's not up to the individual to decide. And the individual, in fact, was not in a position to give up Chinese nationality. You needed to have the government's permission to give up Chinese nationality and or to acquire a different nationality. Now, during the Republican period, after the Republic of China was established, there were two nationality laws adopted, and they both took the same position. That is, everybody, ethnic Chinese, they're all Chinese nationals, and you cannot give up your nationality without the government's permission. So, if nationality was like an albatross around your neck, you couldn't get rid of it. And then the People's Republic of China came in, and their nationality law passed, I think, in 1980, could have been 81, I have to check that. For the first time, it was an enlightened approach to nationality. And the nationality law of the PRC says that anyone with PRC nationality who emigrates overseas, settles down overseas, acquires a foreign nationality, automatically loses Chinese nationality.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a very enlightened approach to nationality. And that remains the law in China today. Unfortunately, that law doesn't apply to Hong Kong. It's very odd. You know, in Hong Kong, the basic law says that only certain laws in the PRC apply to Hong Kong. And those laws are listed in an annex. And if you look in the annex, the nationality law is one of those laws. So it's supposed to apply to Hong Kong as well as to the mainland. But then the meaning of it in Hong Kong is different from that in the mainland. This is very peculiar. I don't think that you can find an example of this anywhere else. At least I don't know of any example of any country where a law means one thing in one part of the country, it means a different thing in another part of the country.
Yeah, which means one country, two systems.
Well, but it doesn't say one law, two different interpretations. But what happened was that the year before the handover was 1999, 1997, as you know. 1996, the National People's Congress Standing Committee came out not of an interpretation, but of an explanation of how the nationality law will be applied in Hong Kong. And it's applied very differently. Now, the article that I just described to you about people, Chinese nationals going overseas, acquiring foreign nationality, automatically losing Chinese nationality, that doesn't apply in Hong Kong. So people in Hong Kong can go overseas, become Canadians, Australians, Americans. They are not regarded as foreign nationals. They continue to be regarded as Chinese nationals. And those foreign documents that they have are considered by the Chinese government only as travel documents. And their children, even if born overseas, like born in Canada, they are considered to be children of Chinese nationals born overseas, hence they are Chinese nationals. So the children born overseas in Canada and in Australia of Hong Kong immigrant parents, they are considered to be Chinese nationals. So this goes down from generation to generation.
Oh.
If you have a Chinese national parent, then you are considered a Chinese national.
Oh, I didn't know. What I didn't know is, I didn't know that legally they still regard children, ethnic Chinese children who are born, overseas, still as Chinese. I didn't know.
Only if they are from Hong Kong.
Only if they are from Hong Kong.
This is the Hong Kong interpretation of the law.
Wow.
Now, people from the mainland.
Yeah.
For instance, there's this bookseller, Gui Minhai.
Mm-hmm.
Gui Minhai emigrated from the mainland to Sweden, right?
Sweden.
He became a Swedish national. China doesn't challenge that. China considers him to be a Swedish national.
Right.
And
only in terms of United Front work, maybe Chinese government has been trying to recruit someone or try to persuade or convince someone to feel you are part of China, but only in terms of your feeling, but not in terms of your identity.
An emotional attraction, perhaps. But Gui Minhai's daughter, for instance, the Chinese government has never claimed her as a Chinese national.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
And Gui Minhai, in China, the Chinese government regards him as a Swedish national and has allowed the Swedish diplomats to visit him. Mm-hmm. And as you know, the last time he was captured on a train, he was with two Swedish diplomats. So the treatment is different. If you're born in Hong Kong and emigrate overseas, you and your children continue to be Chinese nationals. If you're from the mainland, you go overseas and you're naturalized, you and your children are not Chinese nationals. So this is a very weird law.
So in this sense, can I say, in terms of legal interpretation, mainland China is even more advanced than Hong Kong. Hong Kong is even more conservative in making interpretation of who you are.
It was explained to me at that time, 1997, that China did not want to take over Hong Kong when half the population, maybe most of the population, could be considered foreign nationals. They wouldn't have sufficient control over the population. So they simply disregarded their foreign nationals. You're all Chinese nationals. And you can continue to use your foreign passports, but then they're just travel documents. And the British, of course, went along with this. The British were very happy to go along with this because they didn't want several million Hong Kong people to be able to travel to and live in the UK. So the British over the years, from the 1970s on, had changed their immigration and nationality laws and downgraded the situation of Hong Kong British citizens until they became BDTCs, British Dependent Territory Citizen, Hong Kong being a British Dependent Territory. Once Hong Kong reverted to Chinese rule, it was no longer a British Dependent Territory, so you could no longer have a British Dependent Territory citizen or a passport. And therefore they then switched to British National Overseas with no rights anywhere. And this is a very peculiar kind of nationality. It's the only one that you cannot transmit to the next generation. Once this generation of Hong Kong people die out, there will be no more British National Overseas anywhere in the world. A peculiar creation of the British government.
So what's your position? Shall we change that?
Shall we change that?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think the British should have created it in the first place. They should not have. In the past, before they moved to the BDTC, British Dependent Territory, there was only one kind of British passport, and it was called Citizen of the United Kingdom and Colonies, the CUKC. So anywhere in the world, there was only one British passport, and you were a citizen of the United Kingdom and the colonies. And then gradually they make differentiations. But even before that, they changed the immigration law so that other British citizens not in the UK, not from the UK, could not live in the UK. This was directed very clearly at Hong Kong because it's very interesting. They created these different categories of citizenship for not just Hong Kong but other colonies. And then as soon as the Hong Kong question was resolved, they changed the law. Now anyone in any British colony around the world has the right to live in the UK. So it was all changed for Hong Kong. And then once Hong Kong was settled, it was changed back. So people anywhere in any British colony could live in the UK.
Yeah, in this regard, maybe slightly a slightly different context. How do mostly Chinese people, when I'm talking about Chinese people, I mean Chinese people, people having ethnic Chinese blood, how they feel themselves, how they identify themselves, for example, Chinese government is always labeling people, ethnic Chinese people living in Malaysia, Singapore, or even the United States as Chinese, even if they're Americans, they're Malaysians, they're Singaporean. So,
well, I think.
So is this a good sign or is this not a good sign? Because legally China still label you as American, but in terms of feeling, they still, even Gary Locke was seen by most Chinese people as overseas Chinese.
Well, I don't know what it means when you say a good sign. Like Gary Locke, you just mentioned him.
Yeah.
How would it be a good sign for Gary Locke?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
He was the American ambassador to China.
Yeah.
Is it a good thing?
No.
For him to be regarded as Chinese? No.
But when I'm talking about good sign, I'm talking about maybe slightly, it's a force to unify people, to unify the intimate feeling of people.
But when you say to unify people, you're talking about dividing people. For instance, Gary Locke, he's American.
Yeah.
You're talking about unifying him with China and dividing him from the United States, which is his country.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't see how you can say
Yeah.
it's a good sign.
Yeah, yeah.
It is a sign of trying to divide other countries' populations
Mhm.
into citizens who are not in support of their own governments, who support a foreign government in Beijing.
Mm.
And I don't see
Yeah.
that any foreign government
Yeah.
will welcome this,
Yeah.
will think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Apart from the political purpose, yeah, there might be some political purpose behind that. There might be a very normal, primitive feeling of vast majority of Chinese people. If I compare, for example, America with Germany, for example, America is a young country, is an immigration country. Everyone in America, as long as they speak English,
Yep.
you are seen as Chinese, as American.
Yep.
Yeah, people are judging your nationality according to your passport, not according to how well you speak English, according to your face color, which is different to in Germany.
Yeah.
When I was in Germany, even if I spoke German very well without accent, as long as I have an Asian face, people still regard you as foreigner, as
Yes,
foreigners. They are
yes.
judging your nationality according to your face color, not according to your passport.
Yeah,
what
I-
I'm saying is that maybe that's partially because Germany is a European continental country, which is more or less conservative, and the United States is a young country, immigration country,
Yep.
with more or less advanced ideas and a concept.
I think you make a good point. The U.S. is a country of immigrants.
Mm.
It's made up of immigrants from around the world. Like Canada, like Australia, these are countries made up of immigrants. Now, Germany is not a country made up of immigrants.
Mm.
However, it is welcoming of immigrants. Merkel opened Germany's doors to 1 million migrants several years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And I think a lot of people were shocked, including Germans.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
thought there was a very significant move on the part of Germany to open its doors
Indeed. Yeah.
and show that it is not a country only for white people,
Right.
and that other people can become Germans, and Germany can, in fact, change itself and become a different country. It will become a country of various peoples depending on where they're from. Now, I think a country like Japan, which doesn't
Yeah.
welcome immigrants,
Yeah.
I think they have a problem, a demographic problem, because the population is aging and declining, and a lot of countries are facing this problem. Now, the U.S. is not facing this problem because they keep having immigrants
Yeah,
come in,
yeah.
and the country, the society does not age.
Yeah.
Now, China is primarily a country of Han people, 95% Han, whatever. But China itself says that it's a multi-ethnic country. Right? They use the word nationalities instead of ethnicities, but they're saying they're a multi-ethnic country. Being a multi-ethnic country, you cannot really say that you only have one blood.
Mm.
And they do talk about blood now. And I think that that's not very good if you say that you have different nationalities within your borders. For instance, there's a Korean minority in China. So is Korean blood Chinese blood?
Mm.
If Korean blood is Chinese blood, what about people in North Korea, South Korea? They all have Chinese blood? All the people. So I think it's dangerous to talk about blood.
Right.
Especially when you have minorities whose population also are found in other countries along China's borders. And I think that China is gradually evolving its population policy. I have to look at it a little more, but I think it's evolving it in a direction that I think is not positive.
Yeah, talking about blood is actually, frankly speaking, a very conservative, even very dangerous trend,
Mhm.
where we are trying to remind what used to be going on in Germany during the Nazi time.
Mhm.
That goes back to blood.
Right.
Everything goes back to blood. But so in this sense, the United States, they really set up very advanced, progressive concept and example for the rest of the world. But how do you guys settle the problem of loyalty? Because from a very conservative point of view, people say, oh, as long as you don't have this blood, maybe you have some problem with loyalty, particularly for immigrants, for example. Immigrants.
Yeah.
For people who are born on American ground,
Yeah.
there shouldn't be a problem. But as long
Yes.
as you immigrate to the United States when you are 30, when you are 25, then
Yeah.
you have problem to which country you will be loyal to.
Yes, I think that this is a problem, and I personally know people who have lived in the U.S. for 40 years, originally from China, and they still keep their re-entry permit, to travel to China. So when they go to China, they don't use their U.S. passport. They use their re-entry permit, and of course the re-entry permit is issued by the Chinese government and states that the holder is a Chinese national. So in a way, they regard themselves as dual nationals, even though China doesn't recognize dual nationality. China only recognizes one nationality.
Yeah.
So from the standpoint of the protection of the individual, you're giving up any protection by entering the country as a Chinese national. And I personally think that it is not wise from an individual standpoint to do this. And I think that the country concerned, in this case the United States, may consider this an expatriating act. That is, you have become a U.S. Citizen through naturalization, and by continuing to use another country's document, you are, by your action, showing that you don't consider yourself really to be a citizen of the United States. So I think that, but the U.S. claims to only recognize one nationality, but over the years, this has changed through court rulings. So that the U.S. Supreme Court has made it almost impossible for the government to take away an individual's citizenship, regardless of what it does. Because some people have worked in foreign countries and worked in the government in positions that only the national of the country can serve in. And when the U.S. government tried to take away that person's U.S. nationality, the court system said, you can't do that. He only did that because he has to make a living, and the job requires him to say that he's the national of that country. So it's a little difficult from the U.S. Government standpoint.
Okay, thank you very much, Frank. Yeah, thank you so much. It's very
You're very
interesting.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.